So you've worked for Al Jazeera,
Mm-hmm.
Democracy Now!, Vice, The Real News Network, and The Nation. These are all very different types of media outlets of various sizes. You've been working for quite a while now, and you've witnessed the evolution of these media brands over the last decade. With the rise of social media and independent media and revenue models changing, how has media changed for the better? And how has it changed for the worse?
It changed for the better in that, first of all, people broadly across the spectrum are just done with corporate media. Everyone knows they're being lied to. I've never seen trust so low in CNN, New York Times, Washington Post. For people on the left, people who care about Palestinian rights, obviously since October 7th, it's just been unbelievable, the level of deference and subservience to the Israeli narrative. And for people on the right, Russiagate showed people that intelligence officials lie to us constantly. If the Iraq war didn't already prove that, the intelligence community taking part in framing the president as a Russian agent and the media going along with it and refusing to report all the countervailing facts certainly was a wake-up call. So I think it's very positive. There's widespread distrust of corporate media, which always serves to launder the narratives of the powerful, the people who run the country. That's a good thing. On the independent media side, I also think there's a lot of good in the fact that you have so many more choices now. When I was coming up, there was Democracy Now!, which was a wonderful institution and very noble and served a very important role, and The Nation magazine, and there was something called ZNet, which still exists but used to be a lot more popular, but a very small number of sites for the left. But now everyone now is creating, and there's more choices. On the negative side, there's a lot more polarization, a lot more infighting. Like coming from independent leftist media, there's so much pettiness. And a lot of people, including people who I really respect and have used to work with, have, I think, been duped by a really sophisticated propaganda system. On the contentious issues, on the issues that require more critical thinking, Palestine everybody gets. And I don't think there's any serious debate about Palestine anymore. Everyone understands the nature of Israel. It's a genocide being live streamed. And like, what is there to debate there or grapple with? But on the issues that I think require more critical thinking, and I'm thinking of things like the Ukraine proxy war, Syria, Russiagate, unfortunately, a lot of people got duped by propaganda that they otherwise would challenge. And I'm thinking particularly of my former home, Democracy Now!, where I was there for 10 years. I learned so much about journalism there. And at its heart, it's such a noble show. It, grew out of independent media. It blew up, and it's such an important institution. And its work on Palestine has been invaluable. It's a place where so many people who otherwise wouldn't be getting the facts about Palestine can get it every single day and hear from Palestinian voices. So it's so critical. But on the other issues, especially the ones that I spent a lot of time on, I think they've just gotten it totally wrong on things like Syria, Ukraine war, Russiagate, things where it's just on the surface, you just have to apply your critical thinking skills a little bit more. And that's a broad pattern. At The Nation magazine, where I also wrote for a while, there was so much hostility internally to what I was saying, to what Stephen F. Cohen was saying, my late friend and mentor, because we were challenging the prevailing orthodoxy on Russia. And the problem with Trump is he did break people's brains. People were so understandably afraid of Trump and his xenophobia and his misogyny that they bought into the Russiagate scam, which on the surface was being used to undermine him, but ultimately I think actually helped him, because what did it do? It channeled people into a dumb conspiracy theory that he was conspiring with Russia. And so I think to the detriment of both journalism and actually progressive causes, people were swayed to go into that. And those of us who challenged it were ignored. They just didn't want to hear what we were saying. And so that's too bad that there's been, I think, a decline in critical thinking skills in some areas of the left. But I think it's been more than compensated by the explosion of other outlets that have come along to take the place of the major institutions. Like, I'm biased. I work with the Gray Zone, Max Blumenthal. He's filled a huge void by speaking up about Palestine for a long time now. And same with Electronic Intifada and Mondo Weiss. So, and content creators like yourself who have like helped spread really important journalism to way more people who otherwise wouldn't see it because they don't read and they don't have the time to read and the interest. And people like you make these really catchy, engaging videos that reach a lot more people. And that to me is another exciting part is we didn't have that before. Now we have social media videos that can really inform people in a very short amount of time, which people don't have anymore because everyone's attention is consumed by so many different factors.
I'm assuming obviously you prefer the Gray Zone over all of the different places you've worked for in the past, but if you could work for one of them again, which one would you work for?
Well, I mean, Al Jazeera, I was a producer there for about half a year, and I loved being in like a global newsroom. It was very exciting. You're working with all these people, really sophisticated equipment, a studio, a massive global reach, and that's cool. But honestly, the one closest to my heart is Democracy Now! Because I grew up on that show, and it informed me so much. And there's something personal to me about the direction it's gone in that I really don't like. You know, they bought into RussiaGate. They brought on as their top RussiaGate guest, not me, but a conspiracy theorist, a journalist who even claimed to possess secret evidence of Trump-Russia collusion. I don't want to name them because I don't want to name people who aren't here to defend themselves. Yeah. And it doesn't really matter anymore because RussiaGate's over. But so they were duped by things that otherwise they would be challenging.
So how does that happen, especially given that you worked for and there's a connection? Obviously, you could have, maybe had a conversation with them behind the scenes, which I'm sure you've already had.
Yeah, I've tried. It's just unfortunately, the people who make the top editorial decisions have gone a different direction. And I've tried. So I make I make my criticisms publicly in the hopes that, and my hope is still that, like I do believe in democracy, and I do believe that the public, if informed with the facts, can, make, common sense decisions. And that's what I'm hoping is that Democracy Now! Will hopefully listen to the members of its audience that feel as if it's gone in a different direction and can reclaim fully across the board the noble spirit that it was founded on and has always pursued on so many other topics. I just think on certain issues, like, again, dealing with militarism, also China as well. They bought into the Uyghur genocide narrative, which I just think is evidence-free. The basis for it is Mike Pompeo, not exactly a friend of Muslims, and Antony Blinken, same thing, declaring that there's a genocide and relying on Christian bigots like Adrian Zenz, who's from a group called Victims of Communism, which is one of these Western government-tied and funded groups that exist to spread propaganda by designated adversaries. So buying into that, buying into all the Ukraine proxy war propaganda, that if you go back to Democracy Now! 10 years ago, after the Maidan coup, we were challenging. Stephen F. Cohen was coming on to challenge the coup, and Stephen F. Cohen, the last years of his life, was never invited on Democracy Now! Because they went in a different direction editorially on the same issues that they used to be at least having him on to discuss. So it's too bad. So the one closest to my heart is Democracy Now! Because I love that show. It means a lot to me. I learned so much from it, even before I worked there and while I worked there. And I believe it has a noble spirit. I just believe the fact that it's gone in a direction that serves power rather than challenges it speaks to just what a sophisticated propaganda system we have. There's no corruption going on there. There's no one saying, say this and I'll give you money. It's just we live in such a powerful propaganda system in the West that there's enough, just people are flooded with a certain message. And there's also this subconscious understanding, what Chomsky and Herman in Manufacturing Consent called the FLAC mechanism, where you sort of subconsciously intuit that if you go in a certain direction, if you challenge this certain narrative, like for example, Syrian government chemical weapons use, or whatever it is, the dominant narrative at the time that is like you just cannot cross, or the Hamas mass rape hoax, that you're going to be canceled, marginalized, and you're going to get flack. And for some people, that's enough of a subconscious incentive just to ignore reality and not do your job as a journalist.